You just ordered something online. A few taps, a confirmation buzz, somewhere on the other side of the planet, a machine now knows your address, your preferences, your name. Tomorrow, a stranger will hand you a box. You will not think about how strange that is, but the real answer to how this all began is far stranger than any app on your phone. It didn't start with cables, it didn't start with satellites, it started with a piece of black volcanic glass, passed hand to hand across a continent, 9,000 years before anyone thought to write a word down. That glass is called obsidian, sharp enough to cut with, valuable enough to fight over. Archaeologists have traced obsidian tools found in villages in the Levant back to a single volcanic source in central Anatolia, hundreds of miles away. Hundreds of miles. On foot. Through mountains, rivers, and land controlled by people who spoke languages the traders didn't understand. Why would anyone do that? Because information was moving with the glass. Every trade was a conversation. Every conversation carried more than goods. It carried news of who was strong, who was starving, who had good land, who had made an enemy 3 valleys over. The obsidian was the package. The real cargo was data. The archaeologist Colin Renfrew spent decades studying these early exchange networks. He proposed something called peer polity interaction, the idea that neighboring societies didn't just trade objects, they copied each other's ideas, their pottery styles, their burial customs, their tools, simply by staying in contact. Societies that had never met directly still ended up looking strangely similar. Why? Because information doesn't need direct contact. It only needs a chain. One trader talks to the next. That trader talks to the next. And somewhere down the line, an idea born in one valley shows up transformed in a village its creator will never see. Sound familiar? Fast forward a few thousand years, and the chain gets longer, much longer. By around 2000 BCE, the ancient city of Uruk in what is now Iraq was already running something that looks uncomfortably like a supply chain. Grain moved in one direction. Textiles moved in another. Clay tokens tracked debts before anyone had invented writing. Some historians argue that writing itself, the actual alphabet you are reading right now in your head, was invented to solve a trade problem. Someone needed to remember who owed what. The first sentences ever written down on Earth were not poems, they were receipts. Let that sit for a second. Language, in its written form, may have been born as a logistics tool, not to tell stories, to track shipments. Then came the network that most people already have a vague picture of, but almost nobody understands correctly. The Silk Road. Here's the twist. It was never one road. There was no single ribbon of highway stretching from China to Rome. It was a mesh, thousands of overlapping local routes, caravan to caravan, oasis to oasis, no single trader ever traveling the whole distance. A merchant in Samarkand might never meet a merchant in Rome, but silk moved between them anyway. So did glassware, so did diseases, so did religions, so did rumors. The historian Valerie Hansen spent years examining documents left behind along these routes, contracts, letters, tax records buried in desert sand for over 1,000 years. What she found wasn't a story of grand empires trading luxury goods. It was a story of ordinary people, innkeepers, small merchants, moneylenders, quietly building trust with strangers they would only see once or twice in a lifetime. That trust was the actual infrastructure, not the road, not the camel. The willingness of a stranger in one town to believe a stranger from another town enough to do business with him. That is a protocol, that is, in the most literal sense, a network built on handshakes. Here is the counterintuitive part. Goods moved slowly. A shipment might take a year, 2 years, to cross the full distance from east to west, but information moved faster than goods and further than any single trader ever walked. A rumor about a new invention, a new god, a new war, could leapfrog ahead of the caravan itself, passed between innkeepers before the goods even arrived. The historian William McNeill, who spent his career trying to describe world history as a single connected web rather than separate civilizations, argued that contact between distant societies, even thin, occasional contact, was often more important to historical change than anything happening inside any one civilization alone, not the empire, not the ruler, the connections between them. You are living inside the descendant of that web right now. Every notification on your phone is a modern obsidian trade. A small, sharp piece of information passed from a stranger you will never meet, along a chain you cannot see, arriving in your hand because someone somewhere decided you were worth reaching. The server that delivers your message doesn't know you. It doesn't need to. It only needs the next link in the chain to trust it enough to pass the signal along. That is exactly what the innkeeper in Samarkand was doing 1400 years ago. Passing along something he could not fully verify because the system only works if enough strangers agree to trust the next stranger in line. Here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. The internet did not create global connection. It just made the ancient version faster. Humans have been building invisible webs of trust across unimaginable distances for over 9,000 years. The cables under the ocean floor are not a new idea. They are the fastest version of a very old one, fiber optic instead of camel, milliseconds instead of months. But the underlying structure, the same structure Renfrew found in matching pottery styles, the same structure Hansen found in dusty merchant contracts, the same web McNeil spent his life mapping, is identical. Why does this matter to you specifically today? Because it means the loneliness so many people describe in a hyper-connected world isn't a failure of the technology, it's a mismatch of scale. Your ancestors built trust one face at a time, one trade at a time, over years. You are now asked to extend that same ancient trust reflex to thousands of strangers a day, at the speed of a swipe. The instinct is 9,000 years old. The speed is 9 milliseconds. No wonder it feels strange sometimes to trust someone you met through a screen. Your brain didn't evolve for that speed. It evolved for the Silk Road, not the Wi-Fi router. And yet the system still works astonishingly well, most of the time because the core mechanism hasn't changed. Somebody trusts the next link in the chain. That link trusts the next across mountains, oceans, or fiber optic cable. It is still the same 9,000-year-old bet that a stranger passed along by another stranger is worth believing. So the next time a package arrives at your door or a message lands on your screen from someone on the other side of the world, remember what is actually happening underneath it. You are not using new technology. You are the newest link in the oldest chain humans have ever built. A chain that started with a piece of black volcanic glass, carried by someone whose name no one remembers, across land he never expected to survive crossing, trusting a stranger he would never see again. You just ordered something online, a few taps, a confirmation buzz, and somewhere quietly, 9,000 years of human trust just did its job one more time.